Oleg, your time is up.
Okay.
Maybe in the questions answer session you can.
Yes, just few slides remaining, so I'll answer you in the Q&A.
Great. So let me start now with Erik Fernandez. I would like to ask Erik Seyama also to send any questions via chat. Erik Fernandez, you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Oleg. That was a good presentation. It was not clear to me when you were talking about radar platforms, whether these are expected to be local weather platforms, etc. Any more information on that will be important, because clearly it's critical to your solution or your proposed solution. And my second question is what experience, or rather what local groups and partners has your company been involved with in Southern Africa? Thank you.
Thanks, Erik. Nate, do you have any questions for Oleg? Nate, you're in mute if you are speaking.
Because I'm double muted. So, okay, do you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, Oleg. I appreciated it, and wish we would have been able to get to the last slide or two. But I actually just have a question on actually what the technology is. Can you describe a little more what it is you're proposing? I can't tell if it's hardware or if there's a system or a little bit of both. And then the question on sources of data, where you're actually getting the data, and what types of variables you'll be monitoring. Is it just precipitation?
Great, thanks, Nate. Oleg, over to you. You have 4 questions, 2 from Erik, 2 from Nate.
First of all, this is the technology is an embedded one. We have devised the adaptive lattice filter algorithm, which is a very strong computation method of realization of Kalman filter, of digital signal processing technologies, and etc. And we're just trying to deploy it where it's possible for different technological solutions. So for now, this adaptive lattice filter, or simply put alpha, it helps us to reduce the computation burden by simultaneous processing of different sources of data. And by providing this simultaneous processing of the primary data, we reduce this computation burden, and we add some other layers, and we are as well able to read some more parameters than a regular Doppler radar can provide. For now, we are using some certain modules. I just have it here. So we are buying them from the providers. We test our alpha algorithm on this module, and we can simply integrate the module into any radars. For now, there are like tens of thousands of already existing Doppler radars scattered in different countries, not only in Africa, but really globally. And there are 2, there is the second and the third generation Doppler radar, and both have their handicaps. So by this technology, we address the issues of the second generation, which is already established on most of the operating weather services. But as well, we mean to go to the manufacturer and to have this module inbuilt into the Doppler radars of the third generation, which are more superior, but at least they do not execute the 9 tasks which I mentioned. And if they execute some tasks, they execute it in some inferior way, and some tasks of weather forecasting, especially which deals with the energy spectrum and the form of the spectrum of velocity of different meteorological phenomena, they are not simply addressed. And by providing our computational model, we address these issues. And we do so within minutes, like 5 to 7 minutes, and you get the result. And when we provide some estimates of new parameters which are not regularly processed in the Doppler radar, you increase the abundance of the insights which you can work out for the agencies which are active in this disaster prediction, disaster management arena. So we have this embedded technology, and we do not have active contacts in the Africa right now. We have 2 pilots in CIS region and in Israel. And the initial results which we received from the physical deployment on the premise of the weather stations, they are really good results, which we want to scale further. So initially, what we are selling is the module hardware part and the algorithm which is running on this module and the software which helps to provide the insights. So this is the product. Currently, we expect the price in between $50,000 to $100,000. So we are now validating the product market fit and the best business model. The business model will be basically the licensing of the technology. The access to data is a little bit limited. It depends on our negotiation ability with every client. So now the clients are basically the weather stations. In the long run, we plan to become a weather data platform, which is more scalable solution and more sustainable business. But it really it will show up in the near time as we progress further with the negotiation with the ongoing pilot trials.
Okay. Great, Oleg. So the next set of questions, I would like to say the question by Erik Seyama, which is that most countries in the Southern Africa region do not have a weather radar. So how is your company expected to generate data in that region? That's Erik's question. Martin, do you have any questions for Oleg?
Yes, of course, and thanks again. So help me understand, Oleg. I can get the weather by looking out of the window. Okay, so you're moving the time frame between the forecast and the actual perception from 6 hours to almost instantaneous. What does that let me do? My crop is still in the field, so I know it's going to hail, it's going to be destroyed. Fantastic. What do I do with that? Yes, I can move the livestock inside if there's just about to be a thunderstorm coming. But tell me a little bit more about how that actually would apply in our space, which is the agriculture sector. I love data. I'm all about data, but there needs to be a practical application of the data for me to really get excited. So help me understand.
Thanks, Martin. Claire?
I think Martin just stole my question, so I'll ask another one. So the first one is, Oleg, thank you. Could you share from the pilots that you've done so far, could you share some feedback from the customers that you've been working with? And what would you imagine that they would say about why they would choose your product over the competition? Thank you.
Oleg, over to you.
Okay. So the direct client for us is the weather station and the agencies which operate those weather stations, not the farmers, not the individual persons, but actually the agencies. And they have the frameworks how to operate in this or that condition. The advantage of the technology is actually not only the instantaneous predictions, but as well that we can provide the with high precision, we provide the areas which will be affected by the hazardous phenomena. For example, if you have two fields where you are growing your crops, you understand that this field will be impacted and this will not. And you can distribute your efforts just to protect this or that field. And the distance between them can be as much as 100 meters or even less. So it's quite a high precision when you operate on the large areas of crop production. And the same deals with the food processing industry, with infrastructure and etc. Then we already signed a partnership agreement with a company which we previously called our competitor. This is Climacell. It's a very promising startup. It acts as a platform for IoT, and they are digging data from all kinds of radars and IoT devices. So they are already the marketplace of the data, and they are selling data. And we want, in the long run, we want to act in the same way. So now we're just getting data from a few clients. We are selling our solution to these clients, but we want to become a sales channels for those clients as well by providing a completely different level of precision of the data and the abundance of different parameters. As I mentioned, we are reading much more parameters than a regular Doppler radar. And this enables us to actually provide the insights and stay ahead of the competition. The ongoing 2 pilot trials with the weather stations has shown some great results. And the first feedback is what is the cost, because now everyone is very sensitive about the costs with regards to the ongoing economic crisis. This is the first issue because it's very fresh feedback, right? Like a few days ago. The second thing is the technology is really powerful, and we need some customization of the software, because when you provide new parameters, you have as well to provide the software. But unfortunately, for the current stage, our software needs some more updates, and more R&D is still yet to be taken, like 4 or 5 months, to provide an interface which is user friendly. So just to make it a workable solution, we need to spend more times on R&D and actually on bettering our software. So, but for now, the ability to monitor in real time is what everyone is looking for. And I'll mention as well that Google has come up with a similar technology stack recently. They made an announcement, so they're investing in the same kind of technology. IBM wants to deploy their Watson AI for instantaneous weather predictions. And what we are doing now, we are implementing, and it's our next milestone, machine learning to be able to provide these instantaneous weather forecasts with the ability to show the area which will be affected and the type of the damage and the level of this damage as well. And we actually move in line with what the behemoth, the biggest companies in this field are doing. The UK government is willing to spend £1.2 billion on the same technology. So I think it's the right time to invest in this technology to scale. And my call to you actually is we are open to build open collaborations in any country to actually channel the value which we can provide with this technology.
Excellent, Oleg. I want to see if any shark has any last minute question. No? Was clear. Oleg, I think your presentation was very clear. Thanks again for participating. Congratulations. We'll be sending you out the certificate of top innovator, and we'll wait for the results.
Thank you very much.
On Monday. Thanks. So we're going to take a break now, a 5-minute break. We'll be back at in 5 minutes. And while we're in break, we're going to show some interviews from last year Innovation Challenge. So we'll be back in 5 minutes so that the sharks, the judges, can take a break.
We're the team that is involved in the design and implementation of financial products in order for our clients to reduce the number of risks that they have, both in their economies and in areas like agriculture. In terms of the first question, it is very important to point out that the percentage of the population that actually works in the agricultural sector is fairly high in the Southern Africa region. And also it's very important to note that food security and independence is critical to any nation. A break in the system has both social and economic implications. And the economic impact in particular, can lead to fiscal imbalances. It can also lead to famine and or social unrest. Sustainability of the agricultural sector depends on access to the right crops and the information needed to define weather patterns and be prepared for the unforeseen events, such as floods, droughts, etc. Creating mechanisms that provide a safety net to producers is key, but also the availability of insurance and risk transfer mechanisms so that we can ensure that the resources are made available to prevent famine or have serious fiscal implications for governments. Because that will be a good option for them in order to keep and be able to maintain other development projects that are so important for governments and not just focus on one particular problem at a time.
Our consortium is naturally driven to do projects of this nature. Global Parametrics is a public-private partnership. We are meant to crowd in markets in low and middle-income countries. We're meant to build resiliency, and we've partnered with IFPRI's total purpose is to focus on poverty and agricultural policies that will contribute to economic growth and reductions in poverty. So it's a fantastic consortium. We've chosen to also work with the Barcelona Supercomputer Center and the Mentica, which is a new firm. So all in all, we have a very strong team, highly motivated for this purpose. We're excited to do something in the region.
Part of the things that we need to do to reduce food security in the region is, number one, we need a quicker response from the government. There is a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to government responding to some of those disasters. So if we can have a better coordination among the government departments, from the National Disaster Management Center and the National Treasury, the Department of Agriculture, and we have a well-coordinated ministry, and in the policy space, we can do a lot of things much better. We also need to be able to train our extension officers so that they can translate research into practice. And if this is done, that means the research that are coming from the university, from the consortium, can easily be translated into practice. And again, we also need to train the farmers through the extension officer on climate smart agriculture techniques. These are ways for us to improve the level of food production in Southern Africa. The important thing is that there is a lot of potential in Southern Africa, and if we can manage and coordinate and properly able to utilize the food potential in Southern Africa to reduce poverty, able to reduce hunger and nutrition. Thank you.
My team, we are interested in supporting Southern Africa because there's many opportunities there, both from the climate side, from the policy side, and also the practice side. We really look at it as the nexus of those three elements to get a better understanding of what can be explored to better understand the climate dynamics that impact low average rainfall or extreme rainfall events, and get a better idea of what needs to be done in order to better capture the voices of the most vulnerable populations that aren't usually included in the development of tools and other interfaces that the governments could use to make decisions based on increased.
Welcome everybody back. We're now with our third candidate. Juan, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So Juan is from openagri.ai, based in Indonesia, and he's our third candidate today. And so I'll hand it over to you, Juan, and you can share the slides from your computer. Once you start sharing, you will have 5 minutes.
Right. So can you all see my screen?
Coming up? Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. So I can start, right? Right. So hi everyone. We are a team from openagri.ai, and we are a team comprised mostly of data scientists, software engineers, GIS specialists, and agronomists. So our presentation today will be mainly about alternative method of forecasting weather variable using cloud datasets. Yes, those clouds that you can see in the sky. But before we dive into the solution, let me bring you through the past and the present state as to how weather forecasts have always been done in the past and in the present state. Weather forecasts have always relied on historical datasets, mainly gathered from IoT sensors and other form of hardwares. This kind of data is abundant and varied in terms of the kind of data that it can capture. However, it is very spatially limited, and it is costly in terms of installation as well as maintenance. Second source of data will be relying on modeling, whereby we try to model weather and climates. This kind of data is predictable. However, it is very limited by our limited understanding and knowledge and assumptions of the world around us. The third is by using social media and news sentiments. This kind of data is fast as well as cheap. However, it is limited to areas with only active internet users. And lastly, great strides have been made in the present state whereby weather forecasters have tried to use satellite image indices, for instance, your NDVI, EVI. This sort of data is abundant. However, it is just mere proxy indicators and is not forming strong causal relationship. And so in summary, the weather forecast as we know today often use data that are geographically limited, is costly and not predictive enough. And it is especially unhelpful for remote regions such as Southern Africa and anywhere in the world. And so we are going to introduce to you our solution. I like this quote by Snoopy, which says, "Keep looking up, that's the secret of life." And yes, we looked up and we come up maybe the missing piece of the data that is missing in our weather forecasting, and that is cloud. Because cloud is everywhere, it is a good predictor for many critical weather variables such as your precipitation, humidity, as well as drought and natural disasters. And it is abundant in nature, and thanks to the proliferation and the prevalence of satellite images, and it is free and open source. And in combination with historical data, models, media, and remote indices, we can combine this to enhance the overall model predictions of weather variables. And so this is the simple working overflow that we have come up with. Let's say you are a small NGO or perhaps an individual stakeholders, where you want to find out the weather prediction for the next 5 days in the region that I drew my polygon at. So the system will try to download any satellite image for that day, for instance, from Landsat 7 or 8 for Sentinel, and then it'll output a cloud mask, which will be inserted along with other form of data, which includes other spectral images and those historical data that I've mentioned earlier. Maybe optionally, you can also include media and news sentiments and other remote image indices. And this will generate the results such as your typical weather variable predictions. And so we have come up with a simple prototype that we do in a single day, where we try to run this algorithm on Mauritius Island, where we try to predict whether a simple prediction of whether it's going to rain or not in that particular day in the next 5 days. And so using only cloud mask, we are able to generate fairly accurate predictions of the weather variables, such as precipitation. And so there'll be 2 main deliverables from our team with regards to this project. The first is catered mainly towards individual and smallholders, such as your NGOs and perhaps your smallholder farmers, where will be a simple web interface whereby on the left side of the screen, you're able to draw and demarcate a particular land. And then using the system that I've explained earlier, the system will be able to output the general or maybe the weather variables that you are interested in. The second form of deliverable will be in the form of API interface, where this is mainly catered towards institutions like academia and stuff, whereby you can integrate and extend our systems beyond the basic functionalities to be able to be included with your IoT sensors and etc. And then the future plan for us, what are some of the advantages of our solutions? Besides the data being free and open source, it is easy to deploy also across everywhere else in the world. It is an enhancement rather than a replacement of the current data sets that have been used to predict weather variables. And it is also easy to use and extensible, as I've mentioned earlier, by our 2 deliverables that we are planning to do. So this is our business plan. Using our service, especially for individual and smallholders, it will be free of charge because we believe that these services are running on the cloud, and the kind of service that you are going to run is actually negligible in terms of cost. But for institutions, we'll be able to implement a charge based depending on the nature of the service and the kind of integration that you're going to have. And so finally, these last few words, the solution, we hope that it can go beyond Southern Africa to other remote parts of the world, and it can capture more than just weather variables using cloud, for instance, yield as well as market estimations. So yeah, thank you.
Great, Juan, thanks, and just on time. So I would like to now turn to the judges. Juan, if you want to stop sharing your screen so that we can see you. Nate, over to you for first questions.
Great, thanks, Juan. I really appreciate that presentation. I like the format. It sounded a lot like a Shark Tank pitch. I think that I got a pretty good understanding of what you're proposing, but it'd be good to know what the feedback was from some of the early pilots, like in the Mauritius example, and if you have, how long it would take to develop this and scale this out to other places in the region.
Thanks, Nate. Martin?
Yeah, well, again, thanks, Juan. Love it. Your head in the clouds, your feet on the ground. So that's the way it needs to be. But tell me, my question, when the first people started to argue that the Earth was actually round, not flat, this was kind of innovative. You're telling us the information is in the cloud, the physical clouds. Why what's the science behind that? And obviously I'm not a scientist, I'm more a financial person, but it's kind of the first I hear about that. So I would hear a little bit more, I would like to hear a little bit more about that. And then a related, again, non-scientific question. How do you distinguish smog versus cloud? You know, I look up in the sky, it's gray. It could be smog, it could be clouds. Do you have, and one is man-made and the other is not so much man-made. So how do you distinguish these two things?
Great, Juan. So you have 3 questions there. Over to you. Juan, you're in mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I'll try to address the first question with regards to the feedbacks and the results that we have trying to have. So the results is comparable with the historical data. The cloud masking, being able to predict weather variables using cloud mask alone, and and historical data is comparable. So we believe that enhancing this and complementing this with different data sets will be able to improve this much further. And so that's for the first question. Second question is with regards to scaling of this particular project. The timeline that we have, because this is purely software, it'll be very scalable, because in the sense that it'll be open source. All the data source that we have will be all open source, and we are not going to purchase any form of data sets for now. So in terms of scaling, it'll just be building up the infrastructure, and with the team, maybe it might take even less than 3 months to make the initial web platform available, and the APIs will follow as well. So with regards to the I'll try to address the scientific part of the cloud. If I get the question correctly, is it pertaining to the cloud infrastructure, or is it more about like how can cloud predict like weather variables? Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
Sure. It's kind of the first time that I heard about people reading the weather or taking much more information out of the clouds other than they are in between me and the sun. So are you unique? Is your science established? Where is that coming from?
Right. So actually, this is one idea that we came up like in one fine day, whereby we tried to find literatures that try to make that connection between cloud and different weather variables. And surprisingly, that was very scattered. More of it is because they try to, like from the cloud data, they try to find the spectral imageries from there and the sensors, and then try to predict the weather variables. So we attempt to do similar stuff using the cloud predictions. And with regards to how can we differentiate between like smog and cloud, right? Most of the satellite imageries that are available for free for the public has actually a quality assessment kind of like band, where they demarcate for themselves, I think manually or maybe by algorithm, when they produce the map to have the the cloud mask like embedded within them. So we can utilize that to be able to train like a model, like a machine learning model, whereby we can like say that, oh, this particular pixel is cloud instead of smoke, using the various data sets. And then when we have, let's say, an aerial image from drone, we can estimate perhaps from like, oh, this particular pixel is actually a cloud instead of a smoke. So yeah, I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you, Juan. Let me turn to Claire.
Thanks, Juan, for your great presentation. So a couple of questions from my side. So first, could you talk us through the cost structure behind your business model a bit more? And the second, also on the business model, appreciated that your target client or kind of target customer was the smallholder farmers. As far as I understood it from your presentation, you're designing a web-based interface. So Could you talk us through what the user interface would look like for smallholders who don't have a smartphone or internet access? Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Erik Fernandez.
Thanks very much, Juan. Very interesting and I think quite exciting approach you've got. I had still some doubts, and it fringes somewhat on some of the previous question. In terms of the tech, can you enlighten us a little bit more about the time steps, the time as well as the scale in terms of footprint? Clearly, the cloud domain is clear for the region, but in terms of a farm scale, how are you integrating that? So time as well as that spatial scale. And the second one is, you mentioned Mauritius, but has there been any other dialogues with the clients or potential clients or stakeholders in the other Southern African countries? It would be interesting to hear whether you had some feedback from Mauritius that you were able to sort of articulate for your clients or potential clients in Southern Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Erik. Juan, quite a few questions. Over to you.
All right. So with regards to the cost structure, yes, we primarily trying to target smallholder farmers, but our primary additional layer will be those that are like overlaying these smallholder farmers, because these platforms will be beneficial, for instance, for insurance who try to like give out loans and all these things. So these platforms will be beneficial for them, but it's not to say that we prevent like smallholder farmers from being able to access like their own farmlands and being able to know like the weather forecast. So we try to make this as interactive as possible, given the limited internet access as well as the kind of the hardware constraint that they have. So in terms of, yeah, that would be in terms of the platforms. So with regards to the technical steps, I realized that the granularity will be a problem here, because I believe that all the open source kind of like remote sense imageries, the smaller it goes to, maybe it's around like 10 meters or perhaps 10 meters per pixel. So it might pose a lot of problems for smaller farms, but we believe that we can complement this. We try to create a solutions whereby this is complementary rather than the absolute one for all independent kind of solution. So if let's say there's an external like hardware, like perhaps like hardware that is able to capture like a local weather station, then we can integrate this with the granularity and to improve on the granularity side. And with regards to the technical steps, I'll try to make it as simplified as possible, because there will be a lot of time steps when we try to predict using cloud. So let's say you are trying to predict for the next 5 days, like using the cloud, right? So we need to be able to, let's say, get like the previous 30 days for the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years to get the general sense of where the trend is going, right? And then in addition to other historical data and other meteorological data, we can combine this and then come up with a better prediction. So it's more of a time series data. We treat the satellite image or the cloud masking as a time series, like numbers data that is normally apparent in other historical data sets. So that's the idea behind the technical implementation of like this. So we try to imagine the cloud as a time series data, as well as trying to address the last question, which is with regards to the feedback. We are mainly still in the development stage, so we haven't really like gotten any feedbacks, because we are trying to build up the first prototype, trying to implement for our like potential kind of like clients in Indonesia and Malaysia for now, particularly for palm oil plantations. Might be a different context to South Africa in terms of the agricultural of like practices, but we believe that weather is kind of like similar, and by being able to try to generalize the weather data as much as possible by taking in all the cloud data everywhere in the world across times, we believe that we are able to generate the data and being able to scale this up at a much larger scale around the world in most remote parts of the world. Yeah. And maybe one last remark with regards to the feedback. Yeah, we also believe that we try to make this as like remote as possible, you see, because it's a remote part of the world, and therefore we try to make it like less involvement by humans needing to be going there in the site and installing and maintaining. any sensors or hardware because it will take too much time and it will be very costly and not very scalable in a short period of time. So yeah, it's a compromise, I would say.
Excellent, Juan. I would like to ask if any other judge has follow-up questions for Juan. No, everything was clear. I would like to see if Asra is connected. I see you. Can you hear us, Asra?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Would you like to ask a question at this point, or you're okay?
No, not right now.
Okay, very good. Excellent, Juan. Yeah,
sorry.
Martin, go ahead.
I love the fact that you put a slide into your presentation about the South African development zone, but still put it in 3-4 sentences. What exactly is the benefit of your project to that specific region that we're looking at? And I'm not sure whether you answered Claire's question about the cost. I wanted to get a little bit more on that one.
Any other additional question from the judges? No? Okay, Juan, over to you.
So our team's rationale behind this idea is particularly for remote regions such as South Africa. So the benefits definitely will be in terms of being able to reach out even to the nooks and crannies of the parts of the world that is not accessible by us, but it's accessible by the sky and accessible by the clouds, where the clouds acts as like our informants in a sense. So we try to eliminate the human agencies and human involvements in implementing these solutions as much as possible, while not compromising on the quality of the data that we can give to be able to contribute to the weather variables. Because we believe that weather variables is very important, but then you don't have like much weather stations like in the most remote part of the village, right? And it might cost them a lot because these people are the one who needs them the most. And we try to like balance this with the trade-off of finding the best possible open source data while not compromising on the granularity and is accessible across the world. And so with regards to the cost because it is mainly a weather forecast, right? For like single use per day, that kind of thing, the cost is very negligible in terms of like if you put the service up in the cloud. But if you do this in terms of like experiments and like institutions like academia, where you need to like call the service multiple times every day and like giving in a lot of data, like input data, then it will be much costly. So we try to implement this in such a way that for those individual like users, like those who need it the most, like creditors and all this, it will be free of charge because the cost is really negligible if you put it in the cloud, and it's just a running service that you can just do like a web browser click. You see, it's just a hosting kind of like cost. So that's the rationale behind like this particular solution. We try to make it as like low cost as possible. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks.
Great, Juan. Erik Seyama, can you try to talk, see if we can hear you? You have any questions? No, Erik, we cannot hear you. Okay. Any other judges have any other questions? No? If not, Juan, we would like to thank you again. Congratulations for making it to this last round. We'll send over the certificate and look out for the results on Monday. So we'll take again a 5-minute break. We will be back at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, so in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Decisions based on increased risk for food insecurity. So we're talking about opportunities. What can be done? Think of it in a few different ways. However, the overarching theme is this idea of the difference between availability and use of data. There's a lot of data available. There's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of interfaces. But why are some used more than others? What are the governance structures that are currently in place? What are the systems that are currently in place? What is the science that is being integrated into this decision-making process now? What are the questions being asked? So these are the elements that we're trying to explore, trying to identify before we move forward with saying, well, yes, we need to improve the climate science side in these ways, or yes, we need to produce certain data sets in order to improve decision making. We really want to get a better sense of what can be done to close the gap between availability of data and use of data to improve decision making, to lower the risk of food insecurity.
And as an institution, we are kind of laser focused on, as a development organization, laser focused on the SDGs. But our practice in particular very much focused on the SDG 2, which is really trying to zero out global hunger. Quite a challenge. If we think about right now, we're losing ground on that rather than gaining ground. I think in the past 5 years, we have, there's about another 35 million people that are food insecure, go to bed hungry. It's really about increasing productivity, but also figuring out how we can reduce losses and build resilience in agricultural food production systems so that they're more capable of meeting the needs of a growing global population. By 2050, we'll have another, I think it's about almost 10 billion people on the planet. There's a lot of mouths to feed. So it's really about adapting systems to be more climate resilient. Well, a good question. I think that's what we're here to try to figure out with this innovation challenge. Unfortunately, there is no smoking gun. That's a very complex challenge. I think on first hand, we really need to bring better information and data-driven information and evidence to stakeholders at all levels, including farmer production level, traders in the market, insurers, and policymakers in making decisions so that we can bring the best solutions that can put in place ex ante on an ex ante basis, mitigation measures that basically build resilience in production systems, build resilience in livelihood systems. And I think also improving the smallholders' ability. Smallholders make up the majority of food production, very important food security in the region. We really need to, I think, as agriculture is already a risky endeavor, it's only getting riskier with climate change. We really need to figure out how to give them the information they need, the tools they need. There are a lot of legacy investments that we need to go back to. Building strong seed systems, good extension so that they know best soil practices, good farm practices, good forestry that can build systems with a diverse base, and then diversify so shots go so shots. And finally, I think there's a very strong opportunity to improve cooperation among different countries. As the scope of risks increase with climate change, I think there needs to be broader, more systemic, more holistic systems that require information sharing, that require resource sharing, and also policies that really meet the need so that trade food, wherever it is produced, can move across the region from surplus areas to areas that are in short. And move away from these quantitative kind of trade bans that really amplify the effects, the adverse effects of shocks. Thank you.
Now, management of agricultural and food security risks is very important for us as we have a mandate to support our member states to overcome the effects of extreme climate events and hazards on the continent. If you look critically, most of the food security crises on the continent are the consequence of extreme weather events, be it in the Horn of Africa or in the Sahel, and even in South Africa, ranging from droughts to floods and to crop diseases like fall. So managing these events is very critical for guaranteeing security vulnerabilities. Southern Africa, not only in Southern Africa, but on the entire African population depends on agriculture. So what has to be done to change the way agricultural risks are managed, I think, is to develop a whole mindset change. We need to change the approach we use as governments or as organizations working in the agriculture sector to manage agricultural risks. I think we need to start thinking about ex-ante management of risks rather than ex-post, because a lot of gains to make by managing risks ex-ante. Now, our approach as African risk capacity is that we would like to be able to predict risks before they actually happen. And for us to be able to do this, I think we need to be able to quantify and profile the different.
Okay, welcome back. So now we are going to move to the next candidate, Mayank Rajput, who is the from AI Grow Edge Technologies based in India. And Mayank is going to present his solution to this challenge. Mayank, when I stop sharing my screen, you can start sharing yours. And whenever you begin the presentation, we'll start running the clock. Mayank, just to test, you can hear me, and can you speak to make sure we can hear you? Mayank, are you there? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. I see that you're sharing your presentation, so over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Mayank, and I am one of the co-founders of AgroEdge Technologies. We are focusing on special agriculture market using Edge IoT and AI. So this is our team. Abhay as well as Akshay, like these are two co-founders. We have total 15 years of experience in sensors design as well as embedded systems and 2 years of experience in agriculture.
Mayank, can you do a full screen so that we can see your slides better?
All right.
And there is a square, I think it's the actual WebEx video. If you can move it aside or minimize it so that, because it blocks a fourth of your slide.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect now. Go ahead.
Okay, so total we have a team of 6 people right now, and 3 are the co-founders. We have a total experience of 15 years together. So the problem with the special agriculture is that like there are some complex growth conditions and the low yield for in-house as well as farms among the greatest challenges like most of the farmers as well as government agencies, agriculture companies, insurance company face. So the problem is that there is a huge dependency on climate parameters. At the same time, there is no real-time data collection for most of the things, the low yield, as well as high maintenance, while for the specific crops. So for that, we have validated the specialized agriculture market from different market reports. So based on that, like there is a market size of $457 billion for the special agriculture market. We are focusing on herbal and medical plants market right now. So our first target market was India. So that is around 705 million USD, and our target is 30% of that market. And we have already validated our problem statement with 8 different organic farms and villages across 3 states in India, as well as 5 botanical gardens in India and 1 in Singapore. And our solution is Krashak, which is the Edge IoT sensory device to solve this problem with expert system. Expert system is a combination of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the problems that we are solving with this has multiple features, like it has multiple sensors which can detect your environmental as well as soil parameters. It is highly affordable. It has AI-powered expert system with data analytics, and it can connect with the irrigation systems for intelligent automation. And this is our product, the Krashak model. This is the first model that we are using right now for doing the pilot studies with farms. So if you see, like our Krashak has two things. One is the sensory device, which is these two devices. So 30% for our complete solution, 30% is hardware, 70% is software. So the main thing is the expert system for personalized farming recommendations. So this is our traction. We are working with one of the companies in Germany and 3 companies in India right now, one research center and 2 companies to do the pilots as well as for further experiments. And our revenue model is this one, like we are charging $60 per device and $5 per month per subscription from the user to use our app as well as web platform. So our target revenue is $8 million in first 12 months after the product launch. So for the market adoption, our main primary model is the business to business model. We are intending to launch in the month of October. We are in the process of getting the certifications. And our secondary model is for the home edition. Right now, we are working with Arrow and Indiegogo to launch it for the home through the Kickstarter. So for the first primary model, which is B2B model, this is our go-to-market strategy. So we are selling our device, which is the Krashak 1.0, which is the AI-powered intelligent farming kit with our expert system. And how we are selling? We are selling to those people like who are working with farms, like the private farms, agriculture and irrigation companies. Right now we are talking to government bodies, insurance companies, and botanical gardens and NGOs. And our first target market is India, but we are seeing a huge opportunity because our device is highly affordable as compared to our counterparts. So we can expand in Southeast Asia and South Africa too. And we are also exploring some different business model like technology licensing. So we are working with one of the partners in Germany. They are interested in licensing our technology. And for other countries, we will appoint some distributors so that they can work with the other countries also. So these are our competitors. So if you see, like one is Sensecast, which is from France, other is from Spain, Picno, and Fasal is from India. Fasal is working for weather forecasting. Picno and Sensorgrass, they are for data analytics. But their business model is primary business model is traditional farming. So our device is highly affordable as well as that it has data analytics and expert system. But our main target market is special agriculture, which make us different from them. And this is our edge. We can measure different variables. Apart from that, we have our software solution, which can give the personalized recommendation to the farmers and the farms so that they can get high yield and high profit margin. And we are in the blue ocean, like we are tapping the special agriculture market in Asia and Africa. Our device is highly affordable as compared to our competitors, which is 5x cheaper than our competitors. And our strongest edge is like we have a strong connection with the government bodies as well as private farms in India. And we have access to one of the biggest market in India, which is the biggest agriculture market. So this is our timeline. We have already finished our MVP. So we have already started our pilot studies, but due to this corona epidemic, we stopped for some time. So we'll start again in the month of June. So we are intending to launch our first product, which is for B2C model through Indiegogo and Kickstarter in August 2020. And we launch our final product for the enterprise edition for the farms as well as for the government agencies in the month of October. Thank you. So I will just show some case studies. So for the South Africa perspective, like we realized like there's a huge potential for the specialized agriculture.
The time is up, so maybe you want to come back to the case studies in the Q&A session. Thanks, Mayank, for the presentation. If you want to stop sharing your screen, we can see you. I'm going to start this time asking Martin for questions. Martin, do you have any questions for Mayank?
Right. Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for the presentation. There was a lot of information in a very short time, and you were speaking very fast, so I tried to catch up. Listen, when I was a kid, people would tell you wanted to know the weather, you went to ask a farmer. Okay, farmers were supposed to know everything about the weather, you know, it was going to rain, whether the wind was going. So you're now reaching out to the farmers, and I guess it's more industrial farmers, and you also mentioned governments and so on and so forth. to tell them what the weather is. So who's telling whom here? Are you telling them what the weather is, and do you help them, and what's their application of that data? Or are they telling you that your data is correct? So I'd like to hear a little bit about that. And I think the case study went into the South African development little area there, but just to confirm, so this is, you haven't really worked on that space. These will be my two questions.
Thanks, Martin. Claire?
Thank you. I think just to pick up on a couple of points around accessibility and the business model. So I appreciate that you said at the moment you were focused on specialized ag markets. Given the cost structure per kind of purchase of the initial hardware plus the ongoing subscription, do you see potential for it to scale over time to less specialized sectors? And what do you see as the challenges on affordability of that? And then my second question, again on the scalability, how do you see the challenge with kind of increasingly sophisticated AI and machine learning companies coming into the sector, and where do you see the sort of future of the IoT hardware technology? Is it scalable? Is it future-proof? Thank you.
Great. Mayank, so you have three questions there. So over to you.
Sorry, I can't hear the second question. Sorry. There is some problem with audio.
Mayank, you may want to stop sharing your screen. Maybe the bandwidth is going to be better. Claire, do you want to repeat?
Yeah. Can you please repeat the second question before the IoT?
Yeah, so just how scalable is a solution that blends IoT and machine learning / AI? Given a lot of people are coming into the AI machine learning sector with software-based solutions, do you see the hardware component as being scalable and future-proof?
Okay, so I will just take the first question, because we are focusing on the special agriculture and we are talking about the greenhouse, tunnel-based farming and horticulture-based stuff. So in that case, we are not affecting by the outermost weather conditions. So that's why we are not looking in that particular area right now. For the second thing, for the IoT-based stuff that you're asking, yes, our solution highly scalable. We have already talked to the contract manufacturers. And right now we have already trained our models with the help of government. We collected some data from third parties to train our models for some particular crops in India. So this is how we are training our models. So we can extend our mod, if we want to go for other crops, then we can get the data from the other sources. Let's say right now we are focusing on saffron, lavender, etc. So we already have the data. So for example, if some person want to do the farming for the oyster or something else, for some blueberries or something else, so in that case, we will collect the data from some third parties with the help of some research collaborations. Then we will train our model. In that case, we can work with the farmers, and we can provide them the suggestions.
Thank you, Mayank. So we have next up a question that was sent by Erik Seyama, which is that most farmers in Southern Africa are subsistence farmers. They live in less than $10 per day. And so the question that he has is whether these farmers will be able to take this up and how sustainable this solution is for these smallholders, low-income farmers. I want to also ask Erik Fernandez for any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a very interesting presentation. It wasn't clear to me when you were making the presentation that you were focusing on the specialized producers, so thank you for clarifying that. Going back to Martin's point earlier that farmers know the weather, just a comment, when Bavarian farmers came to visit us in the Ag Observatory in DC, they were amazed that we could see their weather better than they could. So farmers are having problem as well now. So, but I appreciated that comment. Very quick one. The working product that you have, the sensors linked to your software, an AI platform. How robust has it been from a technological point of view? I mean, people buy these sensors, they put them out. It'd be interesting for you to give us some idea of how robust they've been, because if you're going to put this out in fields, then it's an order of magnitude kind of problem that farmers might face. And then where you have tried it in India, it was very impressive, because a lot of the kind of climate and farming conditions in India where you've tested this relate quite well to Southern Africa, the Southern Africa environment. So what have been the feedback, suggestions, development or otherwise that you've received from your clients? Thank you very much.
Great. Let me ask Nate to add to the set of questions, and then we'll turn it over.
Great, thank you. Yes, so my two questions relate somewhat to what's already been asked by my colleague Sharks. So the first is with respect to the actual data that are being monitored. Which variables are they? I think the example you showed was just related to soil moisture and soil type. Is there actually weather variable? Are there weather variables being monitored? And the second is on, it kind of touches to Erik Sayama's question on sustainability. What would be the number of devices that a given farmer would need? Is it something that's suggested to be highly portable? Do you know, how does it actually work? Can you describe on the farm as they would use it? And do the devices talk to one another, between farms to gather, aggregate data for improving machine learning, for example?
Thanks, Nate. Mayank, over to you.
Question that you were asking for the low-income farmers. For the low-income farmers, we are talking to government bodies. So government can give them, like they can rent the devices. Like we will sell to the NGOs or the government, and they will give these devices on the rental basis to the farmers. So we are just selling to the government, in that case for low-income farmers. So this is a business model for that. And yes, we are using the off-the-shelf sensors, but we have used from all the good companies, and the accuracy of those sensors are quite good, like more than 95%. We have already rigorously tested in different weather conditions, in very cold conditions like 0 degrees Celsius as well as like 40 degrees Celsius in different parts of India. We have tested at least for 1 month. We are still doing the pilots. And you were asking like for which weather parameters. So we are collecting CO2 level, ambient humidity and ambient temperature from these sensors for the weather forecasting only inside the particular greenhouse environment or something. Then we have calculated based on the feedback from the different farmers. In 1 acre, actually there is roughly 5 devices. Farmer need 5 devices in 1 acre area if they are doing one particular farming. So of one particular crop. But if they are doing for multiple crops, let's say they have divided their farm in 4 different areas, and they are doing farming for 4 different things in one particular area of greenhouse or somewhere else. So in that case, the number of devices will be more.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
So what's the reach of one of these devices? I mean, are we talking meters? Are we talking hundreds of meters?
Yes.
How many would you need on any field?
Okay. So in India, we realize that in some areas, there is no internet connection, or there is low internet connection. So we have multiple devices, and we have one small server in the middle of the farm. So let's say in 1 acre area or 1 hectare area, we are keeping one server in the middle. So we have multiple devices which are communicating to that server via BLE, the low power energy. So you can use the sensors for 10 days. You don't need to recharge for 10-15 days, these sensors, because we have already designed the low power hardware. Then the data will be sent to the server, and server can save the data for at least for 10 days without any problem. Then this data will go to the client, which is our cloud platform. So this is how the things are going, communicating with each other. I can share with my deck actually. I will just share with you.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Just a second, please. Sorry. Yeah. So this is how the things are communicating with each other. So you have multiple sensors here. Then the sensors data is going through, like the sensor data is going through the node. Like there are different sensors in that. So it's sending the data to the main server here. And through the communication protocol, it's going to the server. And through the server, like there is the end solution, which is the Android app, as well as the analytical platform, the web-based. People can see the data, as well as like there's expert system. So expert system is what is giving like expertise. So for example, if they have the low CO2 level inside the ambient, then they can increase that. And we also realized after talking to some farmer, they said like your device should be able to communicate with the irrigation systems that they have. If you want to go for the traditional farming also, they said like your device will be highly successful in that area too, because people are facing some difficulties for the automatic irrigation. So for example, in this coronavirus epidemic era, like there are some problems. People say if they will have this kind of solution, then it will be easy for them to control the things in a more effective way.
Thank you, Mayank.
And sorry, just I'm not quite sure I got that. So any given greenhouse would just require one device unless you had multiple crops separated in different areas where you would need to monitor certain things. That was kind of the reach that I was asking. So I mean, in weather stations, you say there's a reach of about 10 to 15 kilometers that they can cover. So one of your devices would cover what sort of perimeter?
Devices. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Mayank, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. So I said like for 1 acre, we need 5 devices. For 1 hectare area of land, we need 12 devices for a complete coverage.
Right, and you said $60 per device.
Yes, $60 per device. On like as I said, like there are some people like who are doing the specialized farming for saffron or some crops, like where if we are increasing their yielding, then they will get high revenue and high profit margin. So for example, like if a farmer is doing farming and they are making a revenue of $5,000 in one hectare of land for your saffron. So using our solution, they can make like instead of 5,000, they can make $9,000. So like they can increasing it, because India is the second largest producer of saffron after Iran. So this is how like it's affordable for them. Like if they're getting high profit margin, then the price will be quite low for them for our devices. So they are just using a small amount of money to buy the devices. But for other low-income farmers, as I mentioned, like we are talking to government as well as NGOs, like they will buy and they will rent the devices to those people, or
Thanks.
government will give the subsidy to those people.
Nice seeing you on the screen, Mayank.
I have a question. What is the type of information that the farmer is getting from this device exactly that's going to help, like the recommendations that you're saying will be spit out by the software that's going to allow them to basically double their profits, as you say?
Okay, Mayank, so you have Nate's question. You also have Erik Yama's question.
So in terms of like, what farmers are getting, so
hold on, let me ask a couple of questions and then you answer them all at once, because we only have a minute left. What's the life of each device? What's the lifespan of each device? How do you take into account what happens when there's power cuts? And also, how does the model include different soil types? Over to you for the last round of responses.
Okay, our device warranty is for 2 years. If like we are giving the warranty of 2 years for one device, then if there will be any problem with the any sensor kind of stuff, then we will just replace with a new device. This is the lifetime of our device is 2 years. Then you ask for different soil types. So yes, we have multiple sensors like which can get the soil data, and based on that, like it will give the recommendation. So for example, some people need alkaline soil, some people need some acidic soil or something. So based on that, like we are giving through our expert system in a layman language, like how much water they need to pour in one particular area, or to balance the pH, how much they have to add some particular solution in their soil in one particular area, or how much light intensity they have to increase to get in that particular area, so that their plants or crops will get the optimum growth. So this is what the farmers usually get. And for our device, like we are giving the warranty of 2 years for our device, the lifetime.
Great. Thank you, Mayank, for the presentation. The 15 minutes are up. Congratulations again for making it to this last round. We will be sending out your certificate, and watch out for the news on Monday. We will now take another 5-minute break, actually 4 minutes. We'll start at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And so we'll see you back up in 4 minutes for the last 2 candidates.
We need to be able to quantify the different sorts of risks, agriculture and food security risks at different parts of the country.
We can't see you.
Okay.
Kind of what we do.
Last वाले question. एक मिस हो गया, लेकिन भूतनी वाली इतने सारे क्वेश्चन पे क्वेश्चन थे, एक होना था।
उसमें देर से आ रहा था, उसमें वहाँ पे लेट आ रहे हैं, यहाँ पे तो जल्दी जल्दी बोल रहा था, वहाँ पे लेट आ रहे हैं, छूट गए।
So if we can accurately predict, or some fair degree of accuracy predict like how, then you will be able to manage the data going forward.
The reason why I'm interested in this challenge is mainly personal. I started my career working with a major drought emergency in Southern Africa. I realized that the tools, the methods available at the time, this was in the early 90s, were entirely inadequate to the scale of the problem. As a company, we're a social enterprise, and we do the work because we care about the situation in Southern and Eastern Africa. And that's been the focus of most of our work. And we're very lucky to be partnered with Development Seed, who all have a similar philosophy and a similar set of priorities. Well, I think the first thing is technology. And so much of the agricultural decision-making process in the region is very bureaucratic. It's led by ministries, and there are these lengthy processes for gathering data and then responding to that data. What we really need is technology that allows you to decentralize the solution so that farmers, agricultural extension agents, the people in the front line, are the ones who are collecting the data, conveying the data, and responding to the situation on the ground. So we need to de-bureaucratize the process and give the tools to the hands of the people that are making decisions on the front line.
Food security and agricultural risk management is central to what Farm is all about, as we focus on holistic agricultural risk management with a particular focus on smallholder farmers. Our smallholder farmers are particularly vulnerable to a range of risks, not only climate, but things like price, market, all the way up to policy risks. So when we look at agricultural risk management and talk about food security, we're really talking about the impact it has at different levels, smallholder farmers to value chain and market actors, and also governments. So it's important to Palm, and Palm is mandated to enable an environment to help farmers better manage their risks and
Great. Welcome back, everybody. We are going to start with the next candidate, who's Jess Bollinger. She's VP of Strategic Partnerships at Arable, based here in the United States. Jess, can you hear us?
Hear me?
Yes, perfect. So Jess, you will have 5 minutes for your pitch. I'm going to stop sharing my slide and I'm going to let you start sharing yours. And when you start your presentation, we'll start the clock. Over to you, Jess.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's coming up. Yes, we can see it. Go ahead.
Perfect. So as Diego mentioned, I'm Jess Bollinger. I'm the VP of Strategic Partnerships at Arable Labs. And we are excited to be finalists in the World Bank Challenge. We are presenting on real-time microclimate and crop data on 2 time horizons, driving daily farm operations and providing insight into seasonal yields. 75 million people will live in Southern Africa by 2050. Food systems in the region are the most vulnerable because of the reliance on rain-fed crop production, highly variable rainfall, and persistent poverty. Maize-based cropping systems are the most vulnerable, with estimated yields by 2050 across the region at 18%. The lack of accurate and reliable weather data makes it nearly impossible to evaluate causes, impacts, as well as potential solutions. Arable delivers accurate and reliable in-field data and analytics on the microclimate and crop. Through low-cost IoT sensors, Arable mitigates risk on 2 levels, delivering actionable intelligence to farmers to right-time activities with hyperlocal forecasts and crop growth stages, and generating point-based weather data and NDVI for downscaling gridded weather products and GWDs. We use this data set to optimize farmer behavior, connect growers to markets, and reduce type 2 errors inherent in smallholder insurance programs. Arable builds a compact, low-cost device, the Arable Mark. It installs in less than 5 minutes and connects globally to cellular networks, 2G, LTE, and NB-IoT for real-time data delivery. The Mark sits above the crop and it measures temperature, barometric pressure, relative humidity, precipitation, long-wave and short-wave radiation, and incorporates infrared thermometers and a 6-band spectrometer to measure plant response. These measurements are immediately valuable in generating alerts for plant health thresholds, heat stress, high-intensity precipitation events, leaf wetness, in order to optimize field activities. On a second level, these same parameters can be used to improve biases in remotely sensed weather data sets. The team is led by experts in precision agriculture, biology, IoT device manufacturing, firmware development, telecom systems, data science, and software engineering. The focus has been to build the most accurate and reliable environmental data set and derived analytics that is painless to collect and easy to integrate into other solutions. So what makes Arable different? First, we're doing a real-time precipitation, so you can get an alert as soon as rainfall event starts in your field, and we're using a technology that is enabled by microphones sitting in the device and a machine learning classification scheme to determine whether it's rainfall or not, and then based on the sound of the rainfall, how much is falling in your fields. The device measurements are continuously improving, so we have calibration stations located around the US and other parts of the world, and then we can push firmware updates to the devices similar to the way you receive updates on your mobile phone. The device has a 6-band spectrometer, so it's measuring plant canopy and validating the growth stages for field activities and detecting water loss. There's infrared thermometers measuring leaf wetness for disease alerts. The installation is 5 minutes, and there's APIs that make it easy to connect to other platforms and data sets. How are we improving weather forecasts? 280,000 ground stations, weather balloons, and radar sounding equipment underpin forecasts in the United States and Europe. making them fairly strong. There's a lack of weather data from the ground across all of Africa and especially in Southern Africa. So with modern telemetry systems and cost-effective components, we can build a network of stations without requiring recalibration or manual data collection. At the same time as the device collects the microclimate data in each location, it refines the hyperlocal forecasts it's generating, giving communities immediate access to better forecasts for more effective planning. Just as an example, when it's positioned directly above the crop, we see this spectral response data for how quickly the plant is growing on a daily basis. And just as a show here, these are two different satellite companies and the revisit rate and the frequency which they are able to view the plant. And so we are able to get daily information that will give you information about the crop growth curve, but then also if there is a decline in vegetative growth, is there a reason to check that field or to be concerned about changing dynamics across a region? Real-time precipitation, evapotranspiration, and weather. So because we have information about the plant canopy, we can also understand how much water is being lost by the crop. And this is important for two reasons. Understanding crop water demand in combination with the rainfall timing allows folks to be able to turn it on and off at the right times and use water resources effectively.
Sorry, Jess, we had to mute you because your time was up, but we would be good for you to continue telling this on the Q&A session. Thanks for the presentation. Jess, if I can ask you to stop sharing your screen, and then if you want to bring it up afterwards for the Q&A, please feel free to do so. So we're going to start this time with Asra, who's the president of Draper University. Asra, over to you for the initial questions.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have two questions. One of them is more around localization of content. So is the content localized to the farmers in terms of language and data? And also, the second question is more around market. So how are you guys, how are farmers hearing about you, and are these devices then leased to them, or is it a monthly subscription model?
Okay, Claire, over to you.
Yes, great presentation. So a couple of questions. Just to be clear, so a farmer that's interacting with the data feed, how far in advance can they get the information about kind of what weather to be expecting in order for them to take action on kind of actually doing something to address that? So for example, if frost was predicted, they could actually then take action to address it. So that's question one. Question two, I appreciated you had the SMS alerts. How does the farmer have a two-way interaction with the technology if they don't own a smartphone? And then the third question, where would you see your standout points in terms of Arable versus other IoT companies in the sector? Thank you.
Okay, Jess, so you have 4 questions there. You're on mute, so you have to unmute if you want to talk.
So taking action, the timing, we're giving the downscaled forecast for the next 48 hours. The data is transmitted hourly to the grower. So either they can view it as you mentioned, via SMS alerts or on a smartphone or on a computer. And the data, it refines every hour. And then the longer forecaster for 14 days, those are not as accurate, but when we get down to the 48-hour range, that's when we're doing the hyper-local forecasting. And so based on the tools that they have at their disposal, that's when they would be able to take action. So if they do have fans for frost alerts, if they do have irrigation or access to a water supply, those are the types of responses that we can see and how they can improve outcomes. For market solutions, we see this as well, what's worked best for us over the past 4 years is when large agribusinesses have interest in procurement and understanding the timing of harvest and the yield of harvest, and also want to know the weather dynamics at these more rural geographies. There's often a cost sharing between the large food businesses and the smallholder farmers in terms of being able to mitigate risks on the field level, but then also looking at food supply, if they're procuring from different parts of the world, understanding what time different materials are going to be coming from different geographies so that they can coordinate logistics effectively. There was 2 more questions in there. I think I covered alerts, SMS, taking action, and the market. The first question I missed a little bit. It was about who would pay for it. I'm sorry.
Claire, do you want to repeat your first question?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So my questions weren't on paying for it. I think my other question was around your one point of standout versus other IoT companies in the sector.
So other sensor companies are typically measuring the less measurements than we're getting. We're getting 40 measurements. And so being able to combine what we're doing with the weather station, with the weather network data, is different than looking at a single point in the soil or having only the weather without the plant feedback. And so it's just giving you more information to parse out in a big data method of what's actually happening between the plants and the climate on 2 different timescales.
Great. Jess, so now we're going to collect a few more questions. We have a question from Erik Seyama, and maybe you were meaning to cover this on the other slides. How is your solution different from usual available forecasting systems? So if you can go into detail on that. Erik Fernandez, over to you for questions.
Thank you very much, Jess. That was an awesome presentation. Very exciting to see how you're using latest generation tech. One question I had, the bulk of your experience, if I understood you correctly, has been in the US and in Europe, and you haven't done anything yet in Southern Africa or any of the other Southern Cone countries. That's one question. The second one I had was the cost element. I might have missed what you said, but if I'm a small farmer in Zimbabwe or Zambia, what is the cost of this system likely to be for me, either as an individual or as a community where I live? And that's important because, as Martin has been saying earlier, African farmers spend a lot of time in their fields. They don't rely on SMS. They don't have access to it most often, so they can see, feel, touch crops. So I'm provoking you a little bit, but you know where I'm going. Thank you.
Okay, Jess. So you have 3 questions there. Over to you.
I think I can share my screen again. So I'll start by what are we doing differently. The way that we measure precipitation is different. The way that we do the calibration and updates is different than how weather data is typically supplied from these weather stations. Most remotely sensed weather forecasts are ground truth in the United States and in Europe, and typically they are not because of a sparse network of weather stations across Africa. And so this would be an opportunity to refine those weather data models and provide more accurate weather forecasts to growers across the region. I would say for our business for the past 4 years, we've put out 2,000 stations. I would say probably 60% are international, and I would even say outside of Europe. And so talking about East Africa, Southern Africa, parts of Australia and South America are large targets for us. We have done a number of projects in Zambia and Kenya and some small projects in Southern Africa. I think I have I'm sharing the screen. Case study here. We worked with Solidaridad for the past 2 years to understand exactly this use case. They were procuring processing tomatoes for a large company, and they wanted to understand the timing of different events in different regions, and also have the farmers have access to weather data. And so we worked with them to be able to provide it. And they see the use case where the same weather data set can be used to drive farmer decisions, but then also help with credit offerings and insurance offerings in the future. From cost, just looking at the region, there's 36 million hectares of arable land. If we were just to put in devices at a density of 1 every 1,000 hectares, or 36,000 in situ weather stations, it's about $11.8 million per year for weather data to be downscaled across all of Southern Africa. This comes up to a $1.1 million investment per year per country. And for a population that's going to be 75 million people, it would be about 15 cents per person per year. And so there should be a lot of people that are interested in funding this. National governments, NGOs, and aid organizations spending millions of dollars to pre-position supplies and locations of food shortages, private chemical input companies developing crop protection and genetics to perform well in the region, insurance companies looking to underwrite risk, private agribusinesses, private reinsurance companies, research institutions, and logistics companies. So how $11.8 million among the countries and all these stakeholders in providing value across this region. This, I don't think, should be borne out by the smallholder farmer. That would be not the solution to this.
Great, thanks, Jess. Nate, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jess. I really appreciated this presentation. It seems quite promising, and I wanted to know a little bit more about how I guess the segmentation of users, because it seems like what you were just describing in your previous response is that there would need to be some sort of designated mobile device or smartphone that is just effectively serving as a in situ weather station for creating this network that you're trying to fill. But at the same time, and there's also the other segment, which is the user of the information, the farmers, and it seems like those two would be very different. You want a farmer to be having a mobile phone and going around to the different plots and being able to use this, but at the same time, you need that device stationary and being able to measure the same time consistently to be able to have quality data. So can you talk a little bit more about that and what the quality assurance is for the data that are ultimately feeding into creating this broader network?
Thanks, Nate. Martin?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I think it's a little bit similar to what Nate just asked. Typically our organizations would really be focusing on smallholders. Now, I have absolutely nothing against the food value chain, where you have contract farming that eventually ends up in the shelves of the supermarkets here in the United States. If you had, Jess, where would you position Arable in that continuum between smallholders to contract farming? And just again to confirm to me, we're talking open fields here. We're not talking greenhouses, because we had a presentation before on greenhouses. And I keep thinking about, here in the States, kids would be walking through the fields and kicking off these devices. I don't know how big they are. I'm not quite sure, but how solid is this in the remoter parts of the world where people might not value technology the same way we might value technology here?
Jess, over to you.
So the device remains stationary in the field. This is to respond to Nate. So that it's getting the measurements every hour, and so that you can see the changes in the climate and the plant sitting below it. So the idea is that you would use it, conceptually, I believe you would want to use it with a lead farming program and an agronomist who is able to relay the information back out to a larger community of people to all respond to the same information. And that's going to depend on what crop type, what crop mix, and how to benchmark what they're getting from that lead farmer with what other folks are doing and staggering timing so that different crops are ripe at different times. But I think a system can be developed that works for a large group of farmers that would not have access to this data otherwise. I think there's obviously a discussion that needs to happen at the community level for which way makes the most sense, and maybe there's a way to generate local apps and local tools that use this data more effectively among the growers in that location. For Martin's question, this definitely fits better with contract farmers. And the device, I have one sitting here with me, is very small. And I can actually say that out of the 2,000 that we put out, we haven't had any stolen yet. And they're actually very difficult to find once they're installed in the field. Often in corn, I have to go use the GPS coordinates in our system to locate the devices because they essentially disappear and they're very difficult to see.
Thanks, Jess. Any other questions by judges? Please feel free. No? Jess, I guess it was very clear. We thank you again for participating. Congratulations again for making to this round. You will be getting a certificate from us. Actually, there is, sorry, because you just raised the device, there is Erik Seyama from Eswatini that wants to ask a final question on what's the life span of the equipment.
It's a great question. These devices, the new generation devices that are coming out now, are built to last between 5 and 7 years as the mean time to failure. And I believe we have under 5% issue with device replacement. And so just in terms of inventory on hand, in case you need to replace anything, that's the typical number we use.
Okay, very good. And with that, we close this session. Thanks again. And for the judges, will reconvene in exactly 7 minutes at 12:30 Eastern Time for the last candidate.
Private sector actors to invest more in smallholder agriculture. There's a lack of capacity, knowledge transfer, and innovations to help better manage agricultural risks. And PALM is looking to find solutions to all of these, starting with a very neutral approach, assessing holistically and comprehensively different risks and the severity and frequency of risks, and understanding the priorities and the impact of these risks. And from that, identifying possible tools, roles and responsibilities, capacity gaps. And these are all the aspects that are missing, including innovation amongst this to find new solutions. And these are all aspects that PALM working to support.
We are interested in reducing risk in Southern Africa because there is a big opportunity. Farmers, extension agents, governments need information to make decisions. If we can make that information accessible and understandable, we're going to be able to make those decisions and really make a difference. What's needed? There's a lot of data everywhere, lots of rainfall data, lots of food security data. What we need to do is we need to make that data into actionable information people can actually use and make sure that people have the appropriate level of knowledge to actually use that information to make decisions.
At Pula, we develop and distribute agriculture insurance solutions for smallholder farmers across 11 countries in Africa and Asia. Last year, our products reached about 800,000 small-scale farmers. We work together with 15 insurance companies across Africa, 5 reinsurance globally, and we work in partnership because we never sell insurance to farmers directly. What we do is we work partner together with governments, the fertilizer companies to embed insurance products into their products. So I always think that in like Southern African countries, we worked in Malawi and Zambia for the last 3 years. And one of the things that really strikes me about those countries is how vulnerable they are to climate and agricultural risks. You know, like in 1 year, you know, farmers in Malawi may have, in one area, they might have droughts. Like at the same time, like later in the year, they might, this year we had a hurricane. You know, there's so many different risks that farmers facing. Often, like when we talk about these things and we look at the impact on farmers, but I think one of the most, like the biggest ways I've seen this happen is that you actually, like the business I run is called Pula, and Pula in Setswana means rain. But the word for rain across East and Southern Africa is pretty much the same. There's like 60 languages in these countries, but like from Kenya, where it's called Bua, Rwanda, where it's called Imvura, from like Malawi and Zambia, where it's towards Botswana, where it goes to Pula. You know, if the word for rain is the same everywhere, it tells you something how important climate risk is. And so I think, you know, as a business, you know, we really see it as like as pivotal for livelihoods of people living in these countries where 70–80% of the population relies on agriculture, that there is a way that we equip their governments with effective tools to manage risk. So that's really why we're applying for this. And we think that the World Bank, and working together with the World Bank on something like this, because, you know, these governments listen to the World Bank. They listen to what they say. So if you can find tools that work for these governments and you can come together with the World Bank, then you can have a real impact to millions of lives across East and Southern Africa. So that's why we're applying.
Okay, very good. Let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. Now we are going to go to the last candidate. Let me bring Sue. Is Sue with us? Sue, can you hear me? Do we have Sue connected?
Let me see if I can. This one's going.
Yes, Sue, we can hear you. Can you hear me? Sue, can you hear me? Let's give 1 minute to see if we can get Sue's audio working. Sue, can you hear us?
Hi, I'm Johan. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Johan. Johan, would you be also doing the presentation, or is just Sue who would be doing it? Let's give, let's see if we can help them connect. Hillary, if you have a phone number, maybe you can invite them directly by dialing them into the meeting.
Okay, can you hear me? Because I can't hear anything from this side.
Yes, we can hear you, Johan. Hello?
Okay, can you, I see you can hear me on this WhatsApp, so let me try to.
Yes.
Okay, and they hear me. I will share the presentation then from my desktop, or do you already have the presentation in front of you?
No, you have to share it. We can share it, but it would be better if you share it if you're going to be doing the presentation.
Okay, so
go ahead.
You can WhatsApp me. I think you can see my screen now. So,
yes.
And I guess this is in the way. Okay, good. So this is a community-based extreme weather events portal, CWEP. We're looking here at the situation in Southern Africa. Let me just see, I can't get my slide to move on. Okay, there we go. As we know, we have a very rural community in Southern Africa, very much dependent on agriculture. And for that reason, they really are also vulnerable to whatever the weather gives them. And if we have big storms here and hail, that can really have a big influence on Southern Africa. Here also we have a sparse distribution of automatic weather stations, as you probably know, but the people have a lot of mobile cell phones. Moving on to the situation concerning hail in Southern Africa, we do have large variability in hail from year to year, and it can really have a big influence in certain years. These graphs are for a certain company that look at insurance, and it just shows that in 2018 they had massive claims, and that was much more than the total amount of money. Frequency map in the entire region, but that is a very old map, and we have very, very strong indications from the insurance companies in South Africa that they really need a new product and new information at a higher resolution and better interpolated than the very old product that we already have. So we want to track the extreme events, basically focusing mostly on hail and also extreme rainfall. And this we want to do with an enhanced monitoring system to address the situation that we have in Southern Africa. This we want to do using integration of various data sets. We also want to use the system to provide early warning, and that's specifically also to entice people to contribute some of the data that they see in the field. We also want to use the data to do research and create risk profiles or a long-term map of frequency of hail for the insurance companies. So the aims of our project is to establish a localized monitoring system of extreme hail events using crowdsourcing information, to build an integrated modern technology system, and to form a user scientist network to co-develop hail early warning advisories and long-term climatology. So we have data from the weather service in South Africa that we plan to use, radar data, we have insurance companies data, we have cell phone companies with their signal attenuation data. Then we want to use crowdsourced data as well, and we want to use our own data and add to that also hail data. And we have our own weather model, which we want to include in this system to provide automated data maps and advisories to users via the app that I mentioned and a web portal. So we're going to monitor using new and existing devices. We're going to crowdsource. We're going to integrate all these databases, and we're going to disseminate all the products using various avenues. We will also we have investigated various business models, and we're looking at a public-private partnership using MOUs. So on the ARC SCW side, we will do the science, and we will also coordinate all the work that will be done in this project. And these are some of the partners that we have listed there. And I can't hear anything now, so I'm not sure if I'm over my time.
You're doing okay, Johan.
Oh, no.
But Sue, you can hear us now?
Sorry, I can't hear, but this slide is just to show that this system is relevant for the entire Southern Africa because we have hail-sensitive crops for the entire Southern Africa. And these two maps at the right-hand side shows you that the existing old hail products show us that there are some, let's say, also big tendencies for severe storms and hail further up north. And for that reason, it is very relevant to expand the system as we go on in time. Also, another thing is cell phone users will probably become more over Southern Africa. And for that also, this methodology that we're going to use will stay relevant in the future. So the main message here is that we have integration of data sets. Uniqueness here comes in with crowdsourcing of hail information. And there's also an early warning prediction of extreme events component. And maybe we should also mention here that we can use our own weather model to add information in that sense. The data will also be freely available online for all potential users. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan, and 5 minutes, so that was great. Sue, I understand that you can hear us, so I'm going to now ask the first judges to ask their questions, and then please feel free to you and your team come in. So Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much, Johan, for the presentation. Really interesting. Could you talk us through a little bit more the crowdsourcing element of this, particularly what the data looks like that's being crowdsourced? For example, is it qualitative data? Is it being extracted from kind of social media, that kind of thing? How are you analyzing that? And then also related to that, you've mentioned kind of partnerships with mobile phone companies. How are they supporting the data inputs into your model?
Thanks, Claire. Erik Fernandez.
Thanks very much. Very interesting presentation and right in the region as well. So that was encouraging to see. I didn't quite get the business model that you foresee. I heard that you said the data would be freely accessible. How do you sustain the data collection, the synthesis, the advisories? And I guess it relates to a little bit to what Claire said. So I'll stop with that question. Thank you.
Excellent. So Sue and Johan, you have 3 questions there from the first 2 judges. Over to you.
Can you hear me now or not?
Yes, we can hear you very well, Sue. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to go for the first question about the crowdsourcing. At the moment, we are running with AgriCloud, which is an app on the cell phones, and we only collecting qualitative data. But the idea is that during this project, we would then expand that to be able to collect a number of other data sources. So we would collect time of the hail and also some photos and those kind of things as well. We would also have a web portal where people would be able to enter the data. So that it would be a range of all different kinds of data that would be coming in then. And what was the other question was about how the cell phone companies are joining with us. Well, we have been communicating with the Vodacom in South Africa, and they're very keen to come on board. And we also sure that they will help us to connect to many of their clients. And then to go to Eddie's question about the business model, the idea is that we've looked at a number of different ways of doing business model and come up with the option of doing public-private partnerships. And so here, because the Agricultural Research Council is only parastatal, we would then be able to bring in some of the stuff from the government sector, and we would have partners from the private sector. And this would then be via an MOU and be able to run then as a separate entity. I'm not sure whether any of my colleagues would, Chris maybe is there and he could add something on that as well.
Chris, are you there? Do you want to add anything? No. Sue, Claire has a follow-up question. Claire?
Just then to go back to the crowdsourcing point, I'm really interested in it, Sue. Thank you. What then are the incentives for people to contribute the reported data to the platform?
Okay, so the way we have been working with AgriCloud was that they got some point systems. So there were some points if they were giving us back some of the data. And actually it was only with icons, so it was really only qualitative, because we explored a number of ways of trying to get electronic rainfall data to come into the system. And it seemed like it was too complicated for our system at the moment, because we did a surveys in South Africa and we found that only 1/3 of the people have smartphones. And so it wasn't really possible for them to be able to send any other detailed information. So the idea was that they would get some points, and then those points would help them to do other things. The idea with CWAP is that they would also be able to access the data, their own data. They would then be able to get historical data sets and be able to really monitor the data in their own region.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm on my phone at this moment.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, I could just add maybe also because we have our own model and focusing on severe weather, that will be part of the information that you will be able to access on the app every day, knowing that there's a good chance for thunderstorms. And as soon as some people in the area or in the wider region start uploading information about hailstorms in the area, that will be available on the app, and that will also serve as further early warning for anybody who has an app and who contributes data. And they will be able to find all the historic data of their own and the other persons on the app, all the hail data in the region. We will be very open with the information. There's no way that we think that we're going to keep it for ourselves, even though we are going to develop a hail statistics map, a new hail frequency map for Southern Africa, or for South Africa at first, using this information.
Excellent. Thank you for the answers. Let's go for another round of questions. We'll start with Erik Seyama. We have two Eriks in the panel today, in the grand jury. Erik Seyama is asking about the maps you showed on labeled methodology 2, which shows countries like Lesotho and Eswatini grayed out. So the question is whether there has been any consultation on efforts on doing this regionally, and will the region-wide meteorological services be involved? Nate, any questions from your side?
Yeah, I just have one, I believe, maybe one and a half. So, I mean, I hear words like integrating and crowdsourcing, producing an app, and you'll have a portal. But I'm really trying to still wrap my head around what is really the innovation here that you're proposing, other than that it's bringing these things together and targeting it with respect to extreme weather and hail. So can you describe a little bit more where the innovation is? And then regarding the app that has been mentioned a couple of times, do you have a prototype for it? Thank you.
All right, Sue Joanne, you have 3 questions there.
I think there was a misunderstanding around the maps and where they said it was grayed out. I mean, we were trying to show where the main maize production areas are. And so it wasn't that it was grayed out, but it was that where the highest production was. And we haven't actually started to talk to the people in the region in the different Met services at the moment, because during our Rain for Africa project, we were already engaging with some of them, and we were working very closely with South African Weather Service. But our idea for the initial beginning and startup of the project was that we would work in South Africa first and then only expand to the rest of SADC region afterwards. Because one of the slides also showed that there's not very many automatic weather stations across the region. And so that would also have to be part of the development before we would be able to do the real-time data. Johan, do you want to add anything on that question?
Okay, yes. On this, as we showed in the presentation, it is quite relevant to expand into Southern Africa. And then also I'm going to touch on this question about the innovation. I mean, crowdsourcing is not that innovative, I know, but in a way that we're going to be able to, let's say, make the data freely available to everybody in the region in near real time. I think that will be one step forward for many of these things. We're not going to use the data only for ourselves. And then the way we're going to develop the map. So we're going to use the crowdsourced data, we're going to use health sensor data, and we're going to use our weather station data and cell phone signal attenuation data. And then develop our interpolation method over Southern Africa, which is going to use an evenly spaced grid of points to look at specific hail areas as identified through the crowdsourcing system or by any other clients or by the weather sensor data. And using all those input data together with radar data, we're going to interpolate that. So, for example, you look at the thunderstorm cell over a radar in a radar image, and you have one of your input data points in a specific cell. Our evenly spaced grid of points will then also assign that type of hail for the other areas in the same, let's say, intensity part of that specific thunderstorm cell. So in that way, we're going to create more points to interpolate a new hail product with. So that's going to grow the map faster than you would only by using weather sensor data and or only adding crowdsourced data. We're also going to use a convective thunderstorm product from UMETSAT, and using that will create for us in South Africa something that we can develop here, that we can expand further up north in SADC, because there we will have the satellite data, and you can have the crowdsourced data, and you can have the cell phone signal attenuation data. So there's already 3 data sets then that we will be able to work there, and we're going to develop it through calibration here in Southern Africa and South Africa by using our denser weather data and our cell phone attenuation data and crowdsourced data.
Okay, thanks, Joan. We have 2 more judges that want to come in and ask questions. Martin, over to you, and then Asra.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm struggling, Dinah and Johan. I mean, we're really nice people, and don't take this personally, but I hear so many things that you want to do, that you're about to do. I still don't know what you're about. Are you a creator of things, or are you an aggregator of things? Are you both? Who are you? What is it that you're doing? That's one of the questions. And the other question is, we're all about public-private partnerships, but it's linked to the first part. What is it that you want to do commercially? Public-private partnerships are wonderful because they give the private sector access to donor funding, and they give the donors and governments an opportunity to interact with the business, with innovation. But that's just the rail on which the train runs. Where is the rail going? What are we doing here? And that is, I like you, really. Presentation was wonderful, but I can't get my hands around what is it. So these were the 2 questions.
Thanks, Martin. Asra?
Hi. So my question is more around the usability. So on average, how many apps do farmers use? And because I'm not really sure how much data do they really would use in their day-to-day life. So how is this like, I mean, it's good to have, but it's good to have for you and I, but is it something that the farmers are actually using? Do they need it? Are they willing to pay for it? And if yes, that goes back to kind of the business model. Who is paying for this? That's something I didn't understand. And what makes this a sustainable, viable business?
Okay, ready, Sue, Johan, you have a few questions from Martin and Asra. Over to you.
I think let me jump in with the create and collate question. One of the first two questions. So the only real new thing that we will create here is a rainfall of the hail intensity and frequency map. And using the various ways of interpolating all these data sets. So our map is going to make use of more data sets, and it's going to be much more, let's say, well, integrated then, but much more detailed than anything else that exists at this stage. So that way, that part of innovation, that is a real new thing that we will be doing. And everything else is building up to that. Now, the insurance industry really do need that type of data. So they have also even indicated that they will share their data as well to develop that system further. So, but that is a real creation part, whereas the other part is we're taking stuff that basically exists and we change it a bit and we reapply them. I'll leave the other questions maybe first for Professor Sue and somebody else.
Okay, I think if I go to Asra's questions, there was one outstanding question from Nace about AgriCloud and whether it was a prototype or not. So I just want to quickly touch on that one. AgriCloud is an app that has already been working since 2018, and it was being used by 1,800 extension officers and farmers across South Africa. And so if we look at Asra's question about usability and whether farmers are using apps and data, we have had a lot of interactions with the small-scale farmers and also with the commercial farmers in South Africa, and most of them are using some kind of apps and information. Many of them are just using generic only weather information, but what AgriCloud did was it was adding advice and specific advice for specific crops. So there was a pest warning system and also a planting warning system for when the right day was to plant the maize. And so we found that there were people who actually are wanting to use the cell phone to be able to get information about their farming activities. Okay, so
you have 1 more minute and we have to finish.
Okay, the thing around the public-private partnership, I think in many of the Southern African countries, the government is supporting much of the food security and agricultural things, so that although there are commercial companies supplying the inputs and the seeds and the fertilizer, that have to be paid for by somebody. And so if we can optimize the use of those inputs, then there's a better chance that we can be able to survive through the droughts and through some of the other extreme weather conditions.
Excellent, Sue, Johan, thanks very much for your presentation. Congratulations again for having made it to the top list of innovators. We will be sending out your certificate for having come this far, and please stay tuned for the results on Monday. I would like to now thank once again our panel of judges, our sharks, Erik Seyama, Erik Fernandez, Asra, Nate, Martin, and Claire for their time today. They will be going over this session that has been recorded and that will be made available in the website of the challenge. So anybody that wants to go back and see their performance or the questions, answers, and the presentations, they can do that in the challenge website. And we'll reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the second challenge on animal and plant pests and diseases. So thanks again for those who have tuned in to YouTube and the ones who participated in WebEx, and see you all tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you.